皆さんこんにちは。ジャズギタリストの高面信樹です。今日はですね、先月僕がゲストとして出演したマイクズマスタークラスというウェブサイトが主催するデュオコンサートで一緒に演奏した、素晴らしいジャズギタリスト、ブラジリアンのギタリストの、ベン・シュアーにインタビューをしてきたので、その模様をお届けします。彼はですね、今現在ニューヨークで活躍しているんですけども、バークリー音楽大学でも教えていて、ジャズギタリストとしてだけでなく、ブラジリアンのギタリストとしてもかなり有名です。共演者の中にはですね、ルシアナ・ソーダだったりとか、あとはですね、もうブラジリアンの音楽を代表するような素晴らしいミュージシャンがいるんですけども、そんな彼に今回は彼がギターを始めたきっかけやジャズを始めたきっかけ、あとはジャズの耳コピについての彼なりの考え方や、パッド・メセニンにも教えたことがあるミック・グッドリックとのつながり、親交ですね。そういった話を聞かせてもらったり、あと、なんといっても今回僕がいろいろと聞いてみたかったのが、ジャズギタリストがボサノバの音楽だったりとかブラジリアンの音楽を演奏するときにどういったふうにアプローチをすればいいかといったことを聞いてみました。その中でブラジリアンを演奏する時のすごい大切な重要なコツなんかも語ってくれました。今回は30分を超える長さでちょっと長めなんですけども、動画の最後の方ではリーダーとしてだけでなくサイドマンとしても多忙を極める彼の他のミュージシャンへの音楽へのアプローチだったりとか、あとは今現在の彼のプロジェクトなんかもいろいろと聞いてみました。このインタビューが行われたのはニューヨークでも一番うるさいと言われているタイムズスクエアの一角にあるビルだったんですけども、そういったこともあってですね、演奏が終わった9時以降だったので、夜のマンハッタンの喧騒なんかも聞けて雰囲気がちょっと伝わるんではないかなと思います。では、早速彼のインタビューを行ってみたいと思います。最後までゆっくりとご覧ください。皆さんこんにちは。
こんにちは。
ジャズギタリストの高面信樹です。
ベン
今日はですね、ベンシェアを、素晴らしいギタリストベンシェアをお招きして、いろいろと聞いてみたいと思います。Hello Ben.
Hello.
Thank you so much for taking your time to do the
pleasure.
interview.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Nice to see you and play a bit.
Thanks. All right. So first thing first.
Okay.
So I would like to know, could you tell us a little bit about like how you get into playing the guitar and then when was that?
Yeah, I grew up in a family of two classical musician parents. My father was a cellist in the Pittsburgh Symphony.
Wow.
And so they made me, really forced me to play at a young age, you know.
Like, do you remember when?
I mean, really from the time I was 10 years old or even younger, even like 8. And I started, I played piano, I played violin, I played cello. And I remember then I wanted to play guitar because I wanted to play like the Monkees tunes, and they sent me to like a jazz guitar teacher.
Oh.
Trying to learn the Days of Wine and Rose. I'm like, no, this isn't what I want. So finally, I quit everything. Finally, I rebelled in 7th grade, and I said, all right, I don't want to do this. I don't want to play music anymore. And then in 9th grade, when this is my generation, was kind of the later part of the hippie movement. Everybody was sitting outside and playing guitars and jamming, and that's when I caught fire.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's great. Do you remember say who you listened to, like a Jimi Hendrix?
Yeah. I mean, it was Jimi Hendrix, but it took a minute to get to Jimi Hendrix. I think at first it was the Rolling Stones. It was a lot, and then pop groups from that time. Bachman Turner Overdrive was something. And then, as I got more into it, I got a little bit more into the extended jam bands like Grateful Dead at the time, and the Allman Brothers, and there's a group called Traffic, Stevie Winwood's band. I like that one.
Oh, okay. I don't know that one.
Yeah.
I should take the one out. Okay. So let's see. So you started jamming, and then was that kind of like a big reason why you started playing jazz? Like got into improvisation, or how did you get into jazz?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, the improvisation thing, was definitely a part of it. That was definitely interested in that. I don't know. I don't remember exactly why. It just definitely came out of the feeling of jamming and stuff. I was pretty awful at it at first. That's for sure.
I don't believe it though.
And actually, what I was particularly awful was rock guitar. I mean, I just didn't have a good sound and stuff, and there's all these guys playing like, you know, Telecasters and Strats, and I think this is, you know, back in the day where it was like the equipment wasn't so good, so it was just like nails on a chalkboard, Stratocasters into an amp turned up really loud, and you know. And then I actually heard George Benson's record Body Talk, and when I heard that, it was like, oh my God, you know, he's just jamming on like one chord and just doing it, but it's like this beautiful sound, and that really completely changed my direction.
Do you remember when you first heard George Benson?
I think I must have been in like 11th grade.
11th grade. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Santana was another one that was a big influence just in terms of like jamming, you know. But then, you know, it was like when I heard Benson, it was like, whoa, you know. It just, for whatever reason, you know, struck a chord with me.
Yeah. Could you name some of the jazz guitar players that you kind of grew up listening to?
Yeah, I mean, you know, then from George Benson, you know, started listening to Kenny Burrell, and it's funny, I didn't listen to Grant Green as much then as I do now. For some reason, I just wasn't attracted to him as much then. Now, you know, he's, you know, one of my favorites, but it was Kenny Burrell and Joe Pass a lot, you know, and Herb Ellis, and those guys I mentioned because there was something in their playing that I could relate to. You know, I could hear, you know, what was happening a little bit, you know, enough that you relate to that. I think then as you get more advanced and you start to recognize things, and you can appreciate more.
Yeah, kind of like recognizing the language.
Yeah, then you start to, you know, I mean, if I had heard like John McLaughlin, then that wouldn't have made any sense to me. But Herb Ellis, that I could understand, you know.
I see. Actually, you know, one of the most common questions that I got from, my subscribers is, how do you approach transcribing like jazz solos and stuff? Do you have any opinions that you'd like to share?
Yeah. I mean, you know, when I was like in my early 20s, like just like, you know, voracious with trying to do transcriptions, and this was back in the day where all we had was like a cassette player and a pencil, and you know, and you play 2 bars, and then you hit stop, and you're like, oh no, I hit record by accident. But you know, I mean, I was just, you know, and I had my friend Ned Gould, a great tenor player, and you know, he was way into Coltrane and all this stuff, and you know, he'd be doing stuff, and I'd try and transcribe it, and I'd call him and ask him what was going on, and he'd transcribe Miles and Bill Evans. I remember I have like notebooks and notebooks full of like, you know, different transcriptions. And then actually when I got to New England Conservatory, I started studying with Mick Goodrick there when I was doing my master's degree. And I remember there was one time I came in to a lesson, and he said, what do you want to play? And I said, let's play ESP, you know. And I called it, you know, like I tried to play Miles' solo, like, you know. And he looks at me like, what are you doing, you know? And so we had a talk about it, and he said something that really stuck with me. He said, you know, transcribing somebody's solo, it's like eating like a huge meal. Like, you can't digest all of it. You're gonna, you know, there's no way you're able to take it all in. So, you know, you're gonna learn some of it, and then more importantly is sort of like what you digest, what you are able to assimilate into your own playing.
Yeah.
So right now, for example, I'm teaching a class on Mike's Masterclasses, which is an instructional guitar site, and I'm teaching the guitar styles of Grant Green and Pat Martino. And you know, what I told the guys in the first lesson is, this class is not so much about exactly what Grant Green and Pat Martino played. It's more like what I learned from Grant Green and Pat Martino. You know, maybe it's just one idea, or maybe it's, you know, like some little approach that I got, and then, you know, we're gonna really work on taking that and playing it in a variety of situations, kind of stretching it, using the motif and continuing it, transposing, and that kind of a deal.
Nice. So talking about Mick Goodrick, actually I got a chance to study with him for a couple of semesters, and then I remember that he wasn't really into transcribing jazz solos. But do you have do you have something that you
No,
can
he
share?
definitely was not. I mean, that was not his approach at all. His approach was, in a certain sense, kind of mathematical in a way. He would, if you look at his books, he's got like every single possibility. And I studied with him for a year and a half, and I didn't open one of those books once, just because I couldn't relate to, music in that way. What I would do literally would be to go home. He would play, and then I'd go home and I'd just try and learn what he played, specifically more his accompaniments, which to me are really fascinating. A funny story. I walked into New England Conservatory, and I had been a professional musician for a while before I went back to grad school. I had finished my undergraduate in like 1980, and then I stuck around in Pittsburgh for like 5 years, and had a pretty nice career, sort of local career in Pittsburgh. I was working with all the different guys around town, but most notably at the end with Gene Ludwig, who did a lot of the. Yeah, Gene is a great organ player. There's records of Pat Martino and Gene Ludwig, so that was kind of my last gig. So when I went into New England Conservatory, I felt like, okay, I'm an advanced player. I'm gonna rock this place. And I walked into my first lesson with Mick, and he sits down and he says, so well, what do you want to play? And I was like, I don't know. I know a lot of tunes, whatever you think. And he says, how about Blue Bossa? And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this guy doesn't know who I am. He thinks I'm a beginner or something. He's calling me to play Blue Bossa. So we start. I'm like, okay, sure. We start Blue Bossa, and within a bar and a half, I was completely lost. I had no idea what I was like, what?
How did that happen?
Well, have you listened to Mick's accompaniment? He's just got such a unique,
like rhythmically,
voicing everything.
Yeah.
It's not like cycle of fourth, really obvious stuff. It's this kind of contrapuntal thing. Funny stuff.
So you learned.
Yeah,
you
that
learned
was like, okay, all right, okay,
So how many years did you study with him?
I think I actually studied with him for like maybe a year and a half, maybe 2. I did my master's over the course of 5 semesters. At one point I stopped studying with him to study composition, but it was a while, and he was kind of an important figure for a while in my life. I mean, we were close, and even to the point where we were somewhat friends. I mean, I'd go over and we just kind of hang out and play, and we did a couple gigs together and stuff. So
guitar duo or
quartet with rhythm
wow.
section, yeah.
I wish I were there.
That was many years ago. I don't know.
I came to the States in 2001, so
2001. Yeah, that was in the 90s, because I moved to New York. Actually, I moved to New York in like 1989. So
1989.
yeah.
That was actually one of the questions that I wanted to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
So you came to New York in 1989.
89.
Right?
Yeah. Or 89 or 90, like I'm not sure. It was in September or so.
So like how did you establish yourself as
Here.
Who you are?
That's an important question, especially for young musicians who are always trying to come here. It's interesting that like a lot of my career in New York really came out of connections that I made in Boston. There was a huge exodus every year of musicians from Boston moving down to New York. So when I got here, I just was able to connect with people, and so it was a lot of that. That led to some commercial work for me. I did a lot of different club dates and stuff, and at one point then I joined a band called the High Tops, which was all New England Conservatory graduates, and we were doing like, Louis Jordan and James Brown and stuff, all kind of horn and guitar kind of stuff. And that was, that paid the bills for a number of years. That and, some different freelance stuff and teaching. The one gig that I did establish before I got to New York was I got a job teaching at a school that at that point was called the Drummers Collective. So now it's called the Collective. And that was, that didn't pay much, but that I met like an enormous amount of people through that. I met Taduka Fonseca and Ricky Sebastian and Marvin Smitty Smith and Bobby Sanabria and all these guys. And that had a big impact on me musically, and professionally, both. Leo Traversa, Vanderlei Pereira, all these guys.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So actually, the first time I met was at Berklee, like when I was, still like, in Boston, and I got to, study with you like about the Brazil music, right? And that was actually one of the best, the guitar labs, because it's so, practical.
Right.
When I came to New York, I got to play with a lot of singers, and then oftentimes I'd have to do,
Nice.
accompany
Bossa and
Bossa
Samba.
style, yeah.
Nice.
So how and when did you get into Brazilian music?
Yeah. Well, when I was at Drummers Collective, which was the late early 2000s. I mean, I was there for like 5 years or so. I started developing an affinity just for Latin music in general. That that the Drummers Collective had a very exposed me to the whole idea of like world music. When I was at New England Conservatory, it was very still very European influence, contemporary jazz. Which was great because I hadn't had that in Pittsburgh. It was just all like bluesy stuff. But that really I got really interested in just sort of panoramic Latin kind of thing. And then I actually got a gig through Big League Theatricals, which we are in the office of Big League Theatricals right now, to go and do the Broadway show Tommy, Pinball Wizard, the whole thing, in Brazil.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was there for like 2 months, and I was playing guitar too, which is a really easy part. When I was in Japan, I was guitar one. That was a different story, but it was just like and I think we were only working like 4 nights a week, so it was just like I was out a lot and heard a lot of stuff. We were in Rio for a little, which kind of like gave me the mood. But then we were in São Paulo for like a month, so I met some guys, and they turned me on to stuff, and we just hung out, and it's a fascinating place because the music is just such a part of the people's upbringing, so it really kind of grabbed my heart, and then when I went back, it just became sort of like a snowball effect. Like I was like, all right, well, let me teach a class no, the first thing actually was I was like I was about to do my second record. I had like a producer that was interested in investing. I had done one self-produced record, and then there was a producer that wanted to do another one, and so we were looking for a sort of a unifying theme to do on the record, and I was trying different rhythm sections and stuff, and I just had the thought, well, let me try it with Taduka Fonseca, some of the tunes, and I had written some quasi-Brazilian stuff, so I thought, well, let me see it. And when we did the rehearsal, it was just like, wow, okay, this is great, And then I called a singer who I know is a friend, Dominique Each, she's a great singer up in Boston.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, Dominique, I'm going to do this record. Just wondering if you have any students, like any Brazilian, if you know any Brazilian singers that maybe, you know, could like write lyrics to some of my tunes or something, you know, give it a real Brazilian authentico kind of feeling. And she's like, yeah, I do know. I have a student named Luciana Souza.
Oh, no kidding! Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And so, you know, I still have like the cassette tape somewhere of Luciana like playing my tune and singing lyrics, you know. And you know, there's just a couple tunes on that record, Tudo Bem. And, you know, that when we did the record, it found its way into the hands of this agent, and the agent somehow managed to get it into the hands of the Blue Note, and the next thing you know, I had like Brazilian brunch at the Blue Note on Sundays with Ben Sher, you know. I mean, I knew all of like 10 tunes, and there I'm like, you know, got the gig doing this. So that was like crash course learning, because every week I had to like present like Brazilian music to not necessarily a jazz crowd. You know, I had to be prepared for like, okay, there may be like, you know, people from Brazil are here because they want to hear some Brazilian music. So I really had to get a little bit more serious and learn, you know, like more of a cross section of the music. And you know, the music has a huge tradition. I mean, it's just as rich and as varied as American music. So, you know, there's Brazil pop stuff, there's like the earlier stuff, you know, like you played, what's called choro, which is sort of like our Dixieland in a sense, you know. And if you're gonna do like a Brazilian gig, then, you know, you kind of want to touch base on all those things. Of course, like the classic bossa nova stuff, but you want to hit on some Javan, some, you know, Brazil pop stuff, and some of the like, you know, even some of the like more ethereal Airto and Hermeto kind of things. So yeah, it was a great gig, and I had a chance to play with like all the guys, you know, because I had the gig every week. I was calling different people to make the gig, and you know, so yeah. And then it just started snowballing. Then I proposed like, okay, maybe I'll offer a course of Berklee in Brazilian guitar style, and it became really popular. So then there was the advanced Brazilian guitar style, and then there was 2 sections of Brazilian guitar style, and then the Brazilian guitar ensemble, and like at one point I had like 8 hours of like Brazilian guitar classes in a semester. It was crazy, yeah. And then I started doing like Masterclasses. I did, you know, went to North Carolina, University of North Carolina, and in Boone, and in Charlotte, you know, did some classes down there, and then gave a master class at New England Conservatory. You know, Alan Chase was the head of the department then, and started teaching Brazilian ensemble at New England Conservatory. So I did that for about 5 years.
So you literally, you know, learned how to play Brazilian music by playing with other people.
It was a bit of a trial by fire thing. You know, I mean, I had to really, you know, practice and listen to a lot of records and, you know, that kind of thing. I think, you know, like in terms of being a teacher of Brazilian guitar style, what I'm able to bring to it is that I didn't grow up in Brazil, so I have to like sort of listen and be a little bit more analytical, and you know, so it's like, okay, Joyce plays it this way, Rosa Passos plays it this way, you know, and I call this groove and this groove and this groove. You know, if you take somebody in Brazil, they just play. They don't, you know, have all that stuff thought out, like, you know.
But they know it. But
yeah, they know it just playing, yeah. But they couldn't necessarily, like, you know, organize it in a certain way. So maybe my, you know, maybe I'm a little stiffer than they are, but on the other hand, you know, for somebody that doesn't know, that didn't grow up with Brazilian music, I think I do a good job of kind of like giving people a bit.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing a great job, you know.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, is there any advice that you could give, you know, jazz guitar players who want to get into Brazilian music more?
Well,
maybe you should pick one, because it's gonna be a huge topic to tackle down, right?
Yeah, I mean, geez, I mean, you know, let's see, what's his name? Nelson Faria, Nelson. I'm spacing on his name. There's some good books. You can check out my course, and then of course, you know, just listen to the music. I actually have, not to do self-publicity, but I have a instructional video on Mike's Masterclasses. It's called like Ben's Basic, Bossa, and Samba. So that's a good one. I mean, you know, it's a like a half hour, 45-minute introduction to some of the different grooves. Just, you know, it's all samba and bossa nova. It's all related, but you know, there's different tempos and different patterns and stuff. So it's good to sort of have, like, I know, for example, when I started playing, you know, Brazilian music, and I listened to like Bud and Powell, you know, and I just like was da 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 da, you know, it's kind of random. I remember I showed up at a gig and I'm playing behind the singer, and the singer's like, you know, I mean, just I need something like more steady, you know. And so that's the thing about it is that you need to have like sort of some set grooves that are internal. Of course, it's like playing the drums. Like there is always like a feeling of variation, but it has to evolve out of like a groove and then kind of organically build. You can't just, you know, play like kind of random rhythms.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. And I will also include the link to the, you know, Mike's Masterclass.
Okay.
You know, in the, you know, like the below this video, so people can check.
Okay.
Cool.
Fantastic. Yeah. Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Super.
So sounds like you've been playing, you know, Brazilian music forever, right? But are you always playing Brazilian music?
Yeah. No. Brazilian music is sort of like a topic that I got very involved with and played a lot. But I think, you know, like one of the secrets to my success or my longevity in the field has been sort of my versatility and my sort of interest in a wide range of music and ability to kind of like sort of get inside of different styles of music. So one other gig that I did that had like a nice run was playing with a group, Matt Dario's group, Ball and the Jack, which was a group associated with the record label Knitting Factory Records. So that was like this sort of band that did this sort of downtown jazz version of like early Ellington stuff. So we had this kind of sensibility of being like sort of retro, but a little bit on the avant-garde side of it. So, you know, that was something I've done, and then, you know, like I learned enough, you know, blues and rock stuff that I could go out and play the show Tommy and work and stuff like that. There's another musician, Tommy Campbell. It's funny because when I was in Japan, Tommy Campbell lived there for a long time.
Yeah.
And he was playing at the club in Tokyo, Body and Soul. You know that club? Yeah. So I was playing the show Tommy in Tokyo, and Tommy invited me to his gig, you know, so I came and sat in, and he welcomes me, and this is Ben Sher, and he's here in Japan playing Tommy with Tommy Campbell. But anyways, Tommy's band we did for about 5 years called Vocalize, and that was like kind of a little bit like sort of somewhere between Manhattan Transfer and Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Wow.
He had like, you know, these nice vocal arrangements, but then he'd have like some intense polyrhythmic stuff, and you know, there's elements of Robin Ford kind of backgroundy volume swells and that kind of stuff. So, you know, yeah, I tend to kind of get involved with, you know, something and then really kind of get fairly deep into it. Like I was playing, when I got to New York, I was playing in a band called the High Tops, which was like a jump swing band. So, you know, I got real into, you know, the old Fender tube amps and, you know,
Wow.
trying to get the real deal sound on that. So.
Thanks for sharing that, because you know, one of my favorite records is by my friend Yutaka.
Oh, right.
And you know, I was listening to it, and the first track, you know, what you did in the beginning of the first track was so cool. Like,
oh, wow.
I
forget
you know,
which is the first track.
Okay, but you know, like you explain like a volume swell and then
Right.
you know, in a way, it's kind of like almost like painting, like you know, like painting music. And this is a question that I kind of wanted to ask you, but how do you approach somebody else's music? You know, like, you know, what always, you know, impressed me by your playing is always like how you play for other musicians.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate that. Wow. I mean, I don't know that I could, you know, sort of quantify an answer to that. I just kind of try and get into the spirit or the mood and try and find like what my role is or what the language is that's being spoken, and you know, try and speak it as best I can. You know?
Wow. Thanks.
Thanks
for the good, you know, great listen. Yeah. So could you tell us about your current and like a future musical project?
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, all of us have kind of had to take quite a right turn or a left turn, I'm not sure. A turn, anyway,
yeah.
you know, where we've sort of had to shelve, you know, any kind of ideas about, you know, performing with ensembles in clubs and stuff. So, you know, I had done a lot of organ trio stuff. My last record was called Tempestade, and it's kind of like organ trio playing some Brazilian and Samba stuff. It's with Sylvia Cuenca and Gary Fisher. And since the pandemic hit, at first I was doing like a lot of virtual projects, and then I kind of settled into this weekly concert series, which Nobuki was kind enough to play on this week, and
it was
fantastic, and really beautiful.
It was an honor to play with you.
Beautiful, thank you.
Thank you.
And that's been really cool because there's so many great guitarists and musicians in New York, and every one of them brings something different. You know, I played with Pete McCann and Chris Bisterfeld, who have like, you know, a really kind of modern fusion-y kind of approach, and then I played with some really straight-ahead guys, David O'Rourke, Tom Dempsey,
Paul Polenbach.
Yeah, and then like some, you know, some guys who like I think, you know, maybe are similar in their outlook. Paul was one of the guys that was like, okay, yeah, this guy, he sort of thinks like me, so this is gonna work, you know. But it's been really interesting to just, you know, kind of, like you were saying, how do you play with other people? This is really good practice for that, because every week you meet with the probably an hour before the thing and say, all right, well, what should we do? And then, you know, maybe I'm familiar with the person's playing a little bit. I try and think about it a little before, and then, you know, try and come up with some common ground. So this is kind of my project now, is just kind of exploring these duos. And then after the first of the year, I'm going to start to think about how I'm going to put something together a little bit, you know, more permanent, some sort of recording. I haven't really planned it out yet, though.
Okay. So all the videos and archives are on YouTube?
I do have like there's a playlist on YouTube under my channel. It's Professor Sher's Guitar Forum, and there's like, you know, there's videos with you know, I'm sure we'll have one as soon as I go through and edit it, but there's ones with Paul Bolenbach and Ron Jackson and Chris Bisterfeld and Pete McCann and Kenny Wessel and Emmett Sher, my son, and yeah. So I think it's a pretty interesting channel. It really is a good cross section, and there's everything on there from like Ron and I did like a gypsy jazz tune on acoustic to Chris Bisterfeld has like a more funk kind of thing. Pete McCann too has like more of a funky thing. So, you know, just if you go through that, I think you'll find some interesting music.
Okay, I will include that, you know, include the link, you know, below the video. Thanks. And the last but not least, you've been teaching at Berklee, and you've been teaching at like other institute, but do you also teach privately?
Yes, I certainly do.
Like even they are from Japan?
Now that it's been about since I had always done a little bit of online lessons. I teach with a company called Lesson Face, so I've been doing online lessons for years now. But then once the pandemic hit, now 80 to 90% of my teaching is virtual on Zoom, and I think I'm actually liking it, and I think it's kind of an effective way to teach. In a lot of ways, of course, there's no substitute for sitting down and playing with somebody, but it is really good for transferring material. And the way I work to overcome the fact that you can't play live with somebody is we do a lot of file sharing. So I'll play something, and I'll send you the file, and then listen to you play something back, and that kind of thing.
Nice. I would like to take your lesson. Great. And so you can so we can find your contact information on your website?
Yes, you can find my contact information on my website, Ben Sher Guitarist. Simple.
bensherguitarist.com.
.com.
All right. Thanks so much, Ben.
Thank you
Thanks
for
for
having
taking
me.
your time and then doing this interview.
Absolutely, my pleasure. A lot of fun to hang and catch up and stuff.
Thanks so much. 皆さん最後までご覧いただきどうもありがとうございました。
ございます。
ありがとうございました。